Hello, Where We Are listeners. If you're a longtime fan of this podcast or you're just joining us for the first time today, we want to tell you more about our podcast platform called Spotify for Podcasters. We've been using this platform for over a year, and it's been easy to use, and new features are added all the time. You can record and edit podcasts from your phone or computer. You don't need anything fancy, and you don't need previous podcast experience. When you hit publish, you will distribute your podcast to Spotify and everywhere else podcasts are heard. Video podcasts are also available on Spotify if that's your kind of thing. And with Spotify for Podcasters, you can earn money in a variety of ways, including ads and podcast subscriptions. But here's the thing, you can earn money, but it's a free platform. There's no catch. If you're curious or want to see what it's all about, download the Spotify for Podcasters app or go to www.spotify.com/podcasters to get started.
Happy Thanksgiving week, friends. What a beautiful time to reflect on life's blessings. You've heard us talk about Thistle Farms, a 2-year program where women survivors of trafficking and exploitation receive safe, meaningful employment, along with housing, therapy, and healthcare. We're big fans. This week, the women of Thistle Farms want to share with us some of the things they are grateful for that they have found through the healing of Thistle Farms. In the past year, women in the program are grateful to have been reunited with their children. They've bought their own cars, purchased their first home, so much more. You, listeners, play a part in this season of gratitude because every time you buy a Thistle Farms product, candle, a gift set, a leather bag, you support the handiwork and the healing of a woman in their program. So this week, while you're getting your holiday shopping, we encourage you to visit thistlefarms.org and purchase products for yourself and gifts for others that directly support women's healing journeys and add to their list of things to be grateful for. Don't forget to enter the code WHEREWEARE at checkout to receive 15% off your purchase. That's WEAR, we are, all one word, and enter that in at checkout. Happy Thanksgiving from Melissa and I and our friends at Thistle Farms. On this week's episode of Where We Are, Melissa and I will take audience questions. We have received great questions from our listeners over the last couple of weeks, and we thought it was time to do another Q&A episode. And so we're excited to take your questions. This is Where We Are. You're listening to Where We Are. I'm Michael Ware.
I'm Melissa Ware.
And Melissa, this is the first time that we've had to do one of these episodes apart. I'm looking at you on a video screen instead of being able to touch your hand and be with you in person.
We are where we are-ing from afar.
Wow. I didn't put that. Yeah, Where We Are is two separate places. Yeah.
2 different places.
Yeah. But it's good to see you. I've been at this like retreat meeting thing sort of off the grid. And so it's been hard to sort of reach me and I haven't.
No like Wi-Fi, no cell access. I'm back here with these 2 children who have gotten sick for like the 6th time in 6 weeks.
I don't know if it was last week we talked about this or 2 episodes ago, the pronoun usage when they're our children, when they're mine. You didn't play the pronoun game that time, but I could sense you wanted to say your children.
To be frank.
Hey, I think we have some questions to get to. Let's dive in. I mean, first of all, thank you to those of you who sent in questions, and we're always open to receiving your questions. We kind of do Q&A listener question episodes when they're warranted based on sort of the questions we've received. So you could always send those to us over social media, even though social media is dying, at least Twitter. Or email or over on the Substack. So first of all, thank you for these questions, and it's a good way for us to really be in conversation with our listeners, and you all think of questions that we would never think to ask ourselves or
or
to
each
talk
other.
about on the show. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll start off here. The very first question is, what were your hours like working in the White House, Michael? I remember.
Yeah. I mean, I'm interested in your perspective on this. They were so I was young. I was just so young. So it was a time in my life when it kind of didn't matter. I didn't get married until I'd been in the White House for over 2 years.
Yep.
Um, and so, and then, I was in the White House for maybe like 9 months of marriage, and Melissa, you sort of knew sort of what my hours were at the time, so it wasn't a huge stressor, and I didn't have a whole bunch of like other commitments, but they were extensive hours, and it wasn't just the hours at the office, which would, you know, thankfully, I was in a office where sort of starting the day, doing initial emails, uh, uh, on your way to the office, or sort of when you woke up, and then heading in was okay. Not everyone sort of had that. So typically, I wouldn't have to be in until 8:39, and then I was lucky if I got out at 7. Sometimes I'd be in later. But I think the most significant thing about being on the White House, especially, um, we were the first White House to be fully in like the BlackBerry smartphone era, which is like you were just never off.
No, that BlackBerry was always in your hand, Michael.
And there's a way in which, like any news happening in the world, um, that's significant ends up at the White House. So there was always like this sense of needing to be plugged in, to be responsive, and to not sort of lose a step. And so it was, I don't know if I'd have the mental capacity for doing the job the way I did it, with the sort of like all consuming, sort of like attention that I did then. But yeah, no, it was a lot, but I was young. I didn't quite understand, like I felt like I was in a season of my life where my attention didn't need to be pulled in too many other directions. I think if
You've
I
got a
was,
bachelor's degree in the middle of this, FYI,
this
folks.
is true. Um, if I was to like go back to that kind of role, I think I need to have a lot healthier boundaries. But I basically had no boundaries, which I think is like why I think it's like why they kept me why they kept me around for so long. Um, but yeah, Melissa, do you have anything else like you'd add on that?
Yeah, like I'd say like you average around 55 to 65 hours a week. Like that was just like an average.
Yeah,
Like a good week would be like a 50 to 55-hour week. But like I can remember during various things like the HHS contraception mandate, it was literally 24/7. You had like an 80 to 90-hour work week that week.
yeah,
I
yeah.
remember those 80-hour work weeks, and I just distinctly remember that BlackBerry just constantly being open and out.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah. No. Yeah. It was. Yeah. Yeah. It was a lot, but I feel like it was also like a great time in my life. Now, Melissa, you were working, downtown for
yeah, I
in
was at the
DC
State
for much of that, and so Melissa would drop by the office at like 6:30, and sometimes
I'd stop by during lunch because the State Department, it was like
yes,
if I walked quickly, it was like an 8-block walk over to Farragut North, which was the area you were in on Jackson Place. I would walk really quickly. I'd bring you cozy, or
Oh,
a pen.
yeah.
And I would bring it in, and Joshua would usually be like, "What did you bring him?"
Yeah.
Um, or just be like, "Hey, Joshua, this is Joshua DeWa I'm talking about," and I'd bring you lunch, and I'd maybe stay for 5 to 10 minutes, but I always was trying to be respectful of the fact that I had no idea what I was walking into, and also that Joshua might walk over to you at any moment and say, "Hey, I need you,"
Yeah.
or you had to, be working with an intern or something. But yeah, I walked over for and brought you lunch a lot, and then I would walk over afterwards quite a bit, unless I had because I was getting my bachelor's degree, and then eventually I was in my master's degree while you were in the White
Yeah.
House.
And we'd hit up the froyo. Remember the froyo around the corner? Yeah, yeah. That was
That's
good too.
right. I forgot about the froyo.
Yes.
Oh,
And we'd always be so excited when they had the peanut butter. When they had
yeah,
the peanut butter.
peanut butter froyo, and if they would mix it correctly, if they put the right amount of mixer in it. When they didn't, I used to be so upset.
Yes.
Be like, you have one job. Get
Yeah.
the mixer right in
That's
froyo.
to fro the yo. Okay. So can we please get this together?
Anyways, moving on.
Yep.
So this is a really interesting question. What is a policy issue you've changed your mind on before, and why? So I'll go first here. Um, so everybody listening to this podcast has most likely heard of counterterrorism policy. It's something that came about. We've had it for a long time, but it's something that really solidified what we know now as counterterrorism policy. Came out after 9/11. So 2001. And so I was very young at that point, but then, entering college, getting into international relations, national security, I generally wasn't critical of the policy, but until I actually did the work on the policy in my career through countering violent extremism policy, which is the offshoot of counterterrorism policy, I saw the just untold damage that this policy that was pretty much the CVE policy that was birthed between like 2010, 2014, and really solidified in 2014 by the Obama administration. I saw the havoc that it wrought on Muslim communities across America, and I completely changed my tune on CVE policy. I'm very wary of it now. I'm wary of the approaches. I'm wary of all these theories of how people radicalize. Um, so that's definitely something that I've changed my mind on, simply because I kind of went from sort of an academic understanding of it to working on the policy in real time, and talking to communities and people who actually were the quote unquote beneficiaries, who were not actually beneficiaries of the policy.
Yeah. I just on that issue, for me, it was I think it's definitely fair to say, and Melissa, like, you're the expert sort of here to comment on the American side, and I don't know the degree of harm that the American counterterrorism policy caused sort of here. I will say, like, my eyes were open to the capacity of um, the policy bucket, like, if you take it to a certain extent to where it could be headed in the States, by going to the UK and seeing what the Prevent program was doing in the UK for the way it was, I think, unfairly targeting uh, uh, Muslims in the UK. And I don't think that the US situation got that profound. And part of that is just uh, well, yeah, but to go to the UK and see how far those policies could push, and then there's some of the same language in the States, and some people pushing for more UK like policies. Yeah,
Yeah, because they talk.
yes,
Policymakers talk, and I was in on a lot of those conversations, sort of championing what Prevent did in the UK, and it's to the point where school teachers are trained in Prevent policy and told to report students who might be acting suspicious or talking about suspicious things or using keywords that they're trained to sort of perk up at and then report, and it can end up with children being, and their families being accused of things, just because they're, happen to be asking, a question about something.
Right.
Um,
Or like a Muslim student saying like, I believe women should be homemakers like my mommy, and that being sort of interpreted as like a sweeping ideological sort of like
oh, the
sort of
family,
like, yeah, like
family is
policy.
upholding Sharia law, and Sharia law is an
Right.
automatic, check mark. You check the box,
Yeah.
that kind of thing. Yeah. No, I still think I mean,
Yeah. No,
we're
yeah.
we're almost to a decade since, Obama made the task force on CVE. I think that it's just done a lot of damage. And for now, for a lot of the folks and activists and groups and things that are interested in, what they call domestic terrorism and are focusing more on far right, violent extremism and terrorism, are taking kind of
Yes.
have this policy that they're still kind of taking from, but not actually trying to turn on its head and say, what lessons did we learn from it?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Because there were a lot of lessons learned when it comes to putting people in boxes in
Yes.
very opaque, sort of, boxes that cannot be sort of like changed. Um, and just, I don't know, theories of why somebody would radicalize. I mean, you have whole governments, Canadian government, US government, European governments, who were buying into like, this is how people radicalize.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah. Yeah.
a way of radicalizing, and if you fit that bill, like, that's who, we're going to be listening in on your conversations,
Yes. Yes.
surveilling
Yes.
you. And I mean the whole surveillance system on Muslim communities for the last several decades is a whole other kettle of fish. But yeah, since working on that policy, I've become much more skeptical, much more wary. Really wishing that, the whole like sort of industrial complex around it would be, reflected on a bit more.
Yeah. So in preparation sort of for this question, I'm sure that there are policy questions that are presented as sort of binaries, you're for or against, where I've switched my position, but I couldn't really think of anything in the time I had to prep. So I think the shift that I describe is sort of two shifts in opposite directions, at least in terms of how they're traditionally like categorized politically, on federal government spending, particularly on like social programs. And that is, in one direction, I'm more cognizant now than I was before about um, the unintended, sometimes unintended, and sometimes sort of like the ways that major federal government social programs, because of the way lawmaking works, because of the way coalition building works, um, laws that are or programs that are proposed to be like a, a pre-K program or a childcare program, um, like there are many ways for the federal government to support childcare, many ways for the federal government to support pre-K,
Yeah.
uh, uh, and I think sometimes these questions get presented politically as like, if you oppose the bill on,
Then you oppose.
then you oppose like the idea of better childcare or more widely available childcare. But it's like, no, actually embedded in these social programs often are like unintended consequences or like changes to the sector that are just not that you would judge to be not helpful. So that would be the one thing I'm much more cognizant of, um, like the other work that government spending programs can do to a sector that maybe aren't at the center of debate, but end up being quite consequential. The other side of that, so in some ways, that's like, yeah. So the other thing I'd say, so that's obviously a conservative sort of a more conservative critique. I think the more progressive position I've moved towards is a real, not a total, but increasing skepticism of means testing for social programs.
Yeah.
And Matt Brunig, as we've talked about, Matt's really influenced me on this. And I think there was, like, especially in like the Clinton years, but like a neoliberal, like, we could do, like government could be a force for good, but like we just gotta like do everything. We can really like, there's like a technocratic way that we could design programs so that like only those who quote unquote deserve it will have access to it, and da da da. And I think I am more, it's not the idea of uh, limiting the pool for certain programs that I'm against. What's convinced me about to be more skeptical of means testing is that oftentimes what's required to do the means testing can block out those most in need of the programs. So
Yeah.
like, if you have all these reporting requirements in to make sure that people meet certain income thresholds or don't hit income ceilings, well, that's a burden you're putting on the potential beneficiary to meet in order to receive the benefit. And so, like, we do have these like poverty programs that the most poor, they're not reaching. And so,
I mean, the amount of programs there are where the poorest do not benefit is too many to count, to the point where it's almost common knowledge that they're just not going to benefit.
right.
That shouldn't be common knowledge, and that should not be a common outcome.
Yeah. No. Yeah. So that would be the thing. I'm much more aware and focused on the design of especially federal government social programs and all of the effects that they'll have, instead of I think overly favoring sort of the top line, the top line purpose of the program, and then I'm also more skeptical that you could design these things so tightly without having any harm on sort of who can access the program. So yeah, that would be. I think a more sophisticated, my more sophisticated and skeptical view, while still believing government can do big things and good things. Applying a more rigorous sort of skepticism to the way these programs are actually designed in both directions, in a progressive direction and in sort of a conservative direction.
Got it. Okay. So our last couple of serious questions. The first, is President Biden running again?
Yes.
I think so. President Trump has announced.
Yes. And, I'm sticking to what I've said for the last year, which is I think having a Republican House is going to be politically beneficial to Biden. And I think there's no need for Biden to announce early in 2023.
Mm-hmm.
I think they should they should go the first 100 days of the new Congress, assess where he stands after that, and then make a decision. But I think especially with Trump in the race, there is no way, unless there's some significant health crisis or Biden's poll ratings absolutely plummet or something. There's no way Biden is going to provide the chance that what he believes happened in 2016, which is that he sat out the race and it allowed Trump to win.
Mm-hmm.
There's no way that as sitting president, he's going to watch the 2024 race unfold from the Oval Office. And like sit there and watch, potentially even risk the chance that he watches Trump win the White House back after he ran in 2020 to defeat him. Like it's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
unless you convince the sitting president of the United States. And by the way, it is just impossible. It is very difficult to convince sitting presidents of anything. It's going to be very difficult to convince the incumbent president who just won the last presidential election that he can't win this time around, especially when everyone thought that he couldn't win in 2020. Like, it's just, yeah, I think he's running again.
Okay. I mean, I agree, but you have a much better explanation. Um, okay, so our last of the serious questions. Who is your favorite up and coming politician?
I mean, look, we talk about Lauren Underwood.
Yeah.
We talk about, I like Grace Meng,
Who's that?
Congresswoman in New York City.
Oh, okay, yes.
Um, I've had some interaction with her and think highly of her. Um, uh, I don't think it's like Michael Bennett. It's hard to call a sitting U.S. senator an up and comer, but we like Michael Bennett. I think there are all kinds of interesting people at the local level. There's a Republican, Weston Wamp, who I really like. Um, uh, I think, I disagree with her on a range of policy issues, but I think Katie Britt is going to be an absolute rock star for Republicans. She's the newly elected senator from Alabama,
Yeah.
and I think she's going to be in VP talks very early on. So yeah, Melissa, do you have anyone you're keeping an eye on?
I mean, I'm keeping an eye on our new governor in Maryland, Westmore.
Yeah,
He's I think I think somebody commented, I'm trying to remember who, give a shout, because I'm currently blanking on who said it in our live election thread, saying that he was basically made in a lab to be the perfect politician. And I mean, I have to agree. Um, he checks all kinds of boxes. Um, and Our own mayor, Brandon Scott, is also very young. He's 38. And I think if he can weather being mayor of Baltimore, um, I think he could weather a lot of politics above being mayor of Baltimore. Um, I don't know, Michael, if you just saw, but they just finished their special committee on squeegee kids in Baltimore. There was a horrific shooting involving squeegee kids a few months ago, and the mayor put together a task force to discuss how are we going to address basically like a 40 to 50 year issue of youth needing to find work through squeegeeing car windows on various Baltimore streets. And the task force came up with like some really interesting solutions, all focusing on like social welfare and poverty and access and education. It wasn't like your typical list of like, we're just going to throw, money at it, or we're going to throw law enforcement at it.
yeah,
And so he constantly he's weathering COVID. He came in 2020 during COVID. So I'm curious about our own mayor, Brandon Scott, just because he's so young. I mean, there were a bunch of other super young folks who won, or not, I mean, only one super young, Max Frost, but younger,
yeah.
who won new seats like Summer Lee. Like, I'm just interested to watch some of the new Democratic candidates coming in on the House, like you were saying on the Republican side. I'm interested to see where Hakeem Jeffries ends up
Yes,
in terms of
yes,
leadership race.
yes.
You and I have been huge Hakeem Jeffrey fans since he came in. You immediately you said this man's going to be Speaker of the House
I
very soon.
did. I did. I
Yeah,
did say
like
that.
the
I
first
mean,
person
I
I ever
didn't
heard
want to
say
point it out, but you pointed it out for me. I
yeah.
early
So,
on, I thought, yeah,
and I like Hakeem Jeffries. I'd say he's probably one of my top of like who I'm looking forward to seeing where he goes.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. No, that's good. All right, I think we have some less serious questions, and I think maybe like
Thank
kind
you
of
for
a
thank you for sending in less serious questions, so it's not all serious all
yeah.
the
So kind of like a I think like a lightning round.
time.
Yeah, let's
Okay, Michael, favorite kind of cheese?
um
I like how you
you
called
know
this a lightning round. You were
a
like,
good
I'm Italian.
a good mozzarella, but
Oh,
I've been
yes.
thinking, Melissa, about like the mountain herb cheese from the
Oh,
Dolomites.
the
Um,
mountain cheese from the Dolomites is definitely top three for me. Soft pecorino is another.
yes, yes,
Not
yes.
just because most pecorino that's sold in grocery stores is like a much harder, like the kind that you would, shred to put on
It's
pasta.
aged, but this is
It's
like
aged. Thank you.
early
Sorry.
young pecorino.
Yes, young pecorino, and then oh man, Parmigiano Reggiano, just my absolute favorite.
Yeah.
Put it on everything. Bury me with it.
Yeah.
Um, is there a good gluten-free pasta? Um, I actually, Michael, I mean, you really haven't sampled gluten-free pastas too much, but when I've had the Banza pasta, which is chickpea made out of chickpeas, I actually think this is pretty good. It cooks well and it tastes nice.
Yeah.
Um, uh, if you have to run for a state or citywide office, what would you run for?
Melissa?
Honestly, I, I really don't know. I've never really thought about it
Yeah.
because I never in a million years would I ever actually run for office.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
just not the life for me.
Yeah. No, I mean it's yeah. So I mean, just to answer the question, I'd say state, but it is. So I actually really when people come to me and say, "Hey, I'm interested in running for public office," like the first thing I say is like, you don't run for public office generally. You run for a specific office. So what is your why? What's your reason for running for a specific office?
Mm,
And it has to be that you have a unique contribution to make in a way that's specific to that role. And so I'm just like not uh I think that there's a more widely held view of like public office as like a way of uh, notoriety or like having your
yeah,
voice heard.
yeah.
And sometimes like and so like I really like want to like dissuade folks from that view. I know this is like kind of a silly question and just like a hypothetical, but but yeah, I don't think there's sort of like would you run for public office generally sort of question is all that useful. It's like it's is there a specific office that you feel called to serve and say it?
Yeah, I mean, if this were just like completely hypothetical and I actually really did want to run for some kind of office, I could see myself serving on a school board.
Yeah.
But I otherwise don't want that kind of attention on me.
Yes. Yeah.
I like working behind the scenes. I like helping people.
Yeah.
I don't like being the person with the microphone
Yeah.
as I talk on a podcast.
Yes.
Um, so Irish goodbyes or Italian goodbyes? For me, it's Irish 100% of the time. I've always done Irish goodbyes. Irish goodbyes is my favorite thing on the planet. I'm very Irish in that way.
Yeah. Well, so I think my family was like very stereotypically Italian
Yes,
goodbyes.
your family is very Italian goodbye, Michael. Yes,
I
confirmed.
think I tone it down a bit, but how many parties have we been to where I'm like, Melissa, I just have to go like say goodbye to this person again, and like you have to like wait at the door
Oh
for
my
me to
goodness.
say, I got to do one last round of goodbyes. So I definitely have that in me, in me still. Though I'm not, you know, Sunday family dinner growing up, yeah, we'd have like aunts and uncles who would, five different goodbyes and then a beep as they as they drive away, like in case the message didn't come through. Yeah.
Hilarious. Who has longer phone calls? I would want 500 billion% say you.
Really?
Yeah, you have much longer phone calls. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
I'm
You're
constantly
more
in
of
the
a
background
texter.
making
You
things
really
say.
don't. You're really not on the phone all that much.
No, I don't like talking as I talk on a podcast.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, this is really exposing your inconsistencies.
I'm talking with you, and this is one way to talk to you every week is on a podcast for everyone to hear.
Hey, that's what I like to hear.
Hey. Um, this is probably my favorite question that made me laugh out loud. Who would win in a fist fight, Howard Thurman or Dallas Willard?
Okay, first of all, what a deranged mind the person who Second of all, I've thought about this question quite a bit. um, and so Dallas was once asked, uh, if someone was ever, um, you know, threatening like his family with violence, um, or if he ever saw someone being, I forget the exact question. It was something like your family's being threatened with violence, or like um, if if you saw someone who was being attacked, would you use violence to intervene? Something like that. And Willard's answer was, yes, but I do it without anger in my heart. Like I do it as like the 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 best way to love those involved, given the circumstances. Like this beautiful sort of answer. And
That man really said yes, I would totally throw a punch.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Uh, uh, but not out of a spirit of inflicting harm. Yeah. So Dallas grew up like in the country. He had brothers who were kind of physical, older brothers who were kind of like physical with him, and he writes about that a bit. So I think I'm gonna say I think I think Dallas. Um, but it's a tough call. Um, and there may be some history there that would change my mind. But based on what I know of the two men, I think I'd go with Dallas. Yeah.
All right, there you have it. How tall did you want to be growing up?
I feel really good about 6'2", and I am 6'2". And this was recently confirmed at the
At the
doctor's at my doctor's appointment after months of Melissa gaslighting me, saying that there was no way I was
because
6'2",
you slouch.
and I must have shrunk. Uh, and I did not. She was on the verge of calling me her short king, and I did not appreciate that at all. And so I wanted to be 6'2" growing up. I am 6'2", and
Mhm.
and I feel pretty good about it. Melissa, height was quite um a an a dominant theme of your childhood.
It really was. Well, it's because the doctors told my parents when I was 3 that I'd end up being around 6'2". That was their prediction because I was, like, wildly tall as a young child. Well, I hit puberty supremely early at 7, and so what that does is it causes your growth plates to close. So I was 5'9" by the age of 10, so I towered over everyone. So I was always self-conscious about how tall I was, but then I thought, "Oh, well, I'm gonna hit 6'2", and that's pretty cool." Then I stopped at 5'9". And so I was always kind of bitter about that. I wanted to be 6'2", like I was told my whole life that I would be. And then when I didn't hit it, I felt like a failure.
Uh,
Yeah. Um, what is the silliest argument that we've had since getting married?
since getting married, I'm not sure, but we had a absolute horror of an argument during our engagement,
Yeah.
and it was because uh, Melissa had thrown out
Oh my
a
gosh.
signed
Yes.
CD that I had
Uh-huh.
because like I was moving into the apartment that she'd move into when we got married, or no, the other way around. We were moving stuff in preparation for where we'd live after we got married, and Melissa was just trying to organize things and sort of made some decisions about what was needed and what was not. And uh, to me, it turned into like a metaphor of I am losing control over my life. And I will not be respected in like our house, and things will disappear and I will just have no control over it.
The funny thing the funny thing is that that's what has happened, is that because I get into a cleaning tizzy literally every single day, and I just throw things out. I'm like, if you have not moved them, if you have not looked at them, it's getting thrown out. And then I'll be like, where is it? And I'll be like, I have no idea. It's like I got amnesia right after I did it. Um, but the thing is that everybody, I just want you to understand, to marry Michael is to marry Michael and his boxes of belongings. Michael has boxes upon boxes upon boxes upon boxes of old newspapers, newspaper clippings, every single concert ticket, show program, um, experience that he has ever had in his entire life. He has just bins of them. And so I was going through one of these bins because I'd never really actually gone through one before. And I was like, you've got to be kidding me. Okay, why do we have this? And so that's what happened. But yeah, so his greatest fear came true. That is actually how he lives his life, in total fear that I'm going to throw something out, because I do.
But I'm doing okay, guys. Don't send any help for me.
Just send him your concert tickets. He will cherish them forever.
Yeah. Melissa, anything else you want?
One last question.
Yeah.
And this one, um, which child do you like more, Michael? Of our children, obviously.
It. So the question is like, and
Yes,
so I
it's
think
not who do we love more, because we love our children equally,
yeah.
for real.
So it vacillates. It totally does. It really does. Not like on a day-to-day basis, but just for anyone who's been a parent, particularly of multiple developmentally, they just go through seasons, and it's really not. But if you have two, I think like there are just some. I am wired, and Melissa is wired to like different developmental seasons.
We really are.
And so it's interesting having two kids because I think if they were twins, this wouldn't be a relevant question. But because they're going through different developmental stages at different times, then yeah, like you definitely like the one that's in the developmental stage that you're more predisposition to than than the other.
Yeah.
I know that's a non-answer, and it's because I'm not going to be recorded saying I like one child over the other.
Yeah, we are not going to give children fodder later on.
When this question was asked, Melissa and I have a very clear answer at this moment.
100% have an answer right now. Yes, we do. Oh boy.
Anything you want to add there, Melissa, or do you want to like preserve our integrity with our children?
The future relationship that we have with our children if they ever listen to our podcast in the year like 2035.
Yeah, good. That's a good thing. All right, I think that's it.
That's all, folks.
Well, Melissa, I missed you. I've been gone for, too long. I'll be back tomorrow. But
yeah.
It was good.
We'll have Thanksgiving week, and we hope everybody has a wonderful Thanksgiving.
Yes, have a great Thanksgiving. I'll be cooking up a storm.
So much cooking. I bought your turkey today.
I saw it. It looked beautiful.
Yeah, it's 20 pounds.
Yeah, baby. So yeah, no, that'll be good. And happy Thanksgiving. And Melissa, are we doing an episode next week?
I don't think we are, folks. I think we've taken some time off. Maybe. I
Maybe?
should probably know this.
Okay. So we may not be back next week. We may be back next week.
It's always a surprise, folks.
If we are back next week, if you subscribe to the podcast, it'll show up.
Michael, I just looked at our podcast calendar. We, in fact, are. So, everybody, you can expect to see us next week.
Okay, we're committed. And if we're committed, we're committed. Okay, we'll see you next week. Until then, it's been great being with you. This has been Where We Are.
Bye.
It's the end of the weekend, but I still wanna turn up. Yeah, I still wanna turn up. All I want is to go again, but you ain't picked